Oh well. I was thinking I scheduled this thing and I must have scheduled it vertically somehow. I don't know. That's stupid, but oh well. Welcome everybody. Just make sure you leave your name and where you're from in the chat here as we get started. And man, you got people from Ohio and Michigan and Thermopolis, Wyoming. Welcome. Let me just kind of announce yourself as you come on there. And let me know where you're from. That would be awesome. This is a public live stream. I'm gonna going out to everybody. Sometimes I put this directly in the community, the Life in the West community, but today I thought I would just do a live for everyone. See how you guys are doing, and see kind of get an idea of what everybody wants to see. And we're talking today about city versus country. This has been quite an experience for me over the last year that I'm going to kind of share with you some of my thoughts on city versus country, and then answer some of your questions about moving to the country. Like, is it right for everybody to move to the country? What about homesteading? Growing crops and livestock, and what's the best way to get started? Those kind of things. Travis and Missy said, country 1,000%, hands down. Yeah. It's so different. I often lose sight of how different it is because I live in the country. So I never, I don't get a lot of exposure to the city. And then I go to a city, even a city. To me, sometimes I call Helena, Montana, a city, which is, 70,000 people, maybe. I think if you include the whole valley. And we're not talking about 70,000 people like in California where somebody says 70,000 people. And then what they mean is 70,000 people in that area, but it's connected to 7 other towns around it. So you never actually get out of town. This is like, Helena's the capital city of Montana, but it's just not close to a whole bunch of other things, relatively, I guess. So as you come on, welcome everybody. Just say your name. We're going to get started here in just a couple minutes, right at 8:30, or just a couple minutes after 8:30. Finally, somebody said, finally moved out of Butte to outside of Peaburg. Yep. It's a fantastic area. Absolutely. How you doing, Jeff? Oh, somebody on here from Canada. Awesome. Saskatchewan, Canada. Welcome. Ken, do you live rurally or are you in the city? I'm kind of be interested to know. I think it's very important that we remember that people live in the cities. They want to live a lot of them want to live in the country. Some of them don't. And I don't think it's right for everybody. But so that's what I'm going to talk about. What do you do with that? Oh, just branded this weekend. Awesome. I need to brand some calves here really soon. The wind and snow and everything. I don't know how you must have done it on Saturday, because it was kind of snowing here in Helena. In fact, they had some of the auto parts that I ordered because, of course, we always have something breaking down, right? It's like, oh man, I need to spend money on more vehicle stuff. But some of the auto parts didn't even make it to Townsend because of the snow on some of the passes. They shut Livingston Pass down, I guess. So Mesa, Arizona / Billings, Montana. Okay, you got it made there. You're hopefully you're going down south in the winter time. Oh, it was 80 in Roberts. Okay. Yeah, it Saturday I was standing on the bank of a lake fly fishing and it was 80 degrees. It was like cooking me. Felt like it was cooking me. And then on Sunday, it got pretty cold and started raining, and the next morning it was snowing. So, and the high was like 40. And I think we have some more of that coming up this week. Maybe not quite that cold, but there was like 6 inches of snow on McDonald Pass. So, Sunrise, Arizona, welcome, welcome. Puerto Rico or Puerto Rico. I don't even know how, I can't pronounce it. I'm sorry. The Caribbean is hot all the time. Yes, that is true. I bet it is. It's always hot down there. We don't have that problem. If it's a problem, I'm not sure it is a problem. We're going to get into some of that. So as you come on here, I want you to put questions in some things in the comments or in the chat. I mean, because I want to see where people are at. I really want to understand. There's a lot of people, maybe it's you that's in a city somewhere and you like the city, the convenience of the city, or you've gotten used to the convenience of the city, but you see shows like Yellowstone and 1923, you see some of the videos that I make and you want to live rurally and you don't know what it takes to live rurally or if you can do it. This is a big it's a big obstacle. It's a big question on people's minds. I will say that not everybody should live rurally. Rural living carries with it its own issues, a lot of issues. Now there's so much good about rural living. The small community life, the school systems are usually really good. You're living on the land a lot, but you don't have access to anymore. Most small towns don't even have a theater, right? So you don't have access to a lot of like things to go to other than the bar, which I don't go to the bar. So community events, sometimes it's hard to find ways to make a living when you live rurally and that's happening because of corporate a lot of times has put the damper on a lot of avenues of income in small areas. We're sucking all the income, the money out of our communities, our small communities in the West, and sucking it all the way up to massive corporations. So that's making that difficult to find a way to make a living. And I think we need people who want to live in the country and work, but they have to understand that it takes a lot of work, especially if you want to start a homestead or, start ranching or raising livestock or anything like that, because you're going to have to set up some infrastructure first, and that includes the land, it includes some buildings, it includes understanding what livestock you actually want to grow, and then an avenue to sell it, right? If you're wanting to make money at the thing. If you have enough money and you just want to do it to sustain yourself, that's a different story. But if you want to actually give to the community and sell to the community, then you have to understand how to do that, because that's not the same thing as just living in the country. You have to understand the business of selling to other people and what they're going to buy as well. So I really want to hear from you. Do you live in a city? If you live in a city, do you want to go to the country? If you live in the country, what are some of the things that you want to know about? Here's some of the things that I have come across living. I've always lived rurally. So I started out with my parents owned in life. I was born. I didn't really, I don't remember this part, but we were in Conrad, Montana, and my parents grew up. Both their families were farmers up there. My dad was way more of a cowboy than a farmer, but that's what his family did was farm. So farming and ranching are different. Farming is generally known as working the land, so growing crops of some kind, and then ranching is cattle or it's usually associated with cattle. If you raise sheep, you're usually known as a farmer for some reason, or hogs. Even you're known as a farmer. So it's one of those things where they started out in the farming world. Then when I was born, when I was about 2 years old, they lost the farm. That was in the 80s, the 1980s, not the 1880s like they're talking about down in the chat. In the 1980s, they lost their farm. And that was a tough time for all farmers and ranchers because it was really difficult to make a living farming. Way even more difficult than it is now. The interest rates were astronomical. There was, farm promotion was out there, but in kind of a wrong way, and it really eliminated independent farms and ranches. So they moved down to Helena, Montana, and my dad had to make a living. And make a living at something that he hadn't done before, and that was sales. And so he became an insurance salesman, and he sold insurance for 15 years. And that's how he made a living. Moved us back up to the country finally. And then he started a horse leasing company. And that's when I was a teenager. And we started leasing horses to, guest ranches, outfitters, kids camps, things like that. So that's how we got back into the rural lifestyle. And we had, 180 horses that when I was 18, he got hurt. So I had to take over most of the management of that. He got a head injury. Most of the management of that the same year I got married. I got married at 18 as well. So I've been living this life, this country life, in and out for all my life. I've sat on a bale wagon in the middle of a field and prayed to God because I didn't know how we were going to make it. I've seen the stress of what it takes to make a living at farming and ranching or industry that's out here, what it takes to live out here, the amount of work that it takes, the amount of dedication it takes. I mean, you can love to farm and ranch, but if you love to travel, if you love convenience of things around you. When I was watching, my wife and I were watching Farmer Wants a Wife, and there was a lady there was like, yeah, I can see us going to the stop and by the field to check cows on our way to going to a dance or a party or going out to eat or something. That doesn't really happen that much. It doesn't. When in a ranching family, you go out to eat on special occasions, like usually after you get done branding, you take everybody out to eat. Because it's a ways to get usually to a restaurant that's any good. So you have a totally different way of life. There is no, like, you don't run out on every Friday and Saturday night to go experience the town, because sometimes there isn't much of a town to experience. Sometimes you don't have money to go do that. So there is a lot of people that want to experience this life. I think it's probably wiser to start on a small scale and learn about the rural life without that massive amount of stress. And if you can figure that out, that's awesome. So just to plug my community, I have a community on school. You go to lifeinthewest.com, you will find links to that community. That community is meant to bring people who live rurally already, ranchers, farmers, homesteaders, that kind of person, into conversation with people who want to do this, who want to move to the country or start something where they can be more sustainable. Now, it is a paid community. So during this live stream, if you email me at trinity@lifeinthewest.com, if you send me an email, somebody will get a free month in that community. So keep that in mind. So just send me an email that says, I want to be a part of the Life in the West community. I should have had something set up on the front page of the website so you could join the email list, and then I could go down the list from there, but I didn't get time to do that. So, all right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read some of the comments, some of the questions, see if there's some questions in here, and see what if you guys have any questions about how to do this life. If you're already in the life, do you have any suggestions for those who are? That if you do, those are the kind of people I would love you to be in the group to help these people. We need to come together. So there's several groups that live rurally. Okay, there's several different groups, and they're often at odds with each other, even though they shouldn't be. And they're hunters. Hunters are often at odds with the people who own land because they're always mad at them for not allowing more access or something like that. And those are delicate issues. There's a lot of hunters that make it very hard for other hunters to have access. What I mean by that is hunters who destroy property, leave gates open, cut fences. And these are very, very prominent things, very common things. They leave trash all over. They ruin it for all other hunters because the rancher is sitting there going, my word, I've got to work 7 days a week to make sure that this is, that this is profitable enough to keep my family here. And now I have to manage hunters who are, tearing down my fences. And that just doesn't, it just makes it so much more difficult. So there's a lot of different groups in rural living that have to work together, and a lot of times they aren't. So I want to bring those groups together to help them understand. Ranchers need to be more connected to their consumers, the people who want to buy directly from a ranch. That's another thing, is finding local producers who sell directly to customers can be very difficult. It's not like they sometimes you can go to a feed store and they'll have, somebody will have something pinned up on the board, and that's one way. But another way, is through word of mouth. So if we don't know about them, it's very difficult to find them. And I want the people that want healthy food, healthy, sustainably raised food, not the stuff that comes through the factory. I want people to have access to it. And one of the ways they can have access to it is to find a local producer. Like Marbled here in Billings, Montana, marbled.com. You can go to them. They everything they raise is born, raised, and butchered right here in Montana. Those kind of companies, Little Belt Cattle Company, Old Salt Co-op here in Helena, Montana. They even have 2 restaurants in the area. And if people don't know about them or what they do, it's really difficult to promote those independent farms and ranches. So before I get to reading the comments, I was just going to talk about this a little bit. So right now, I think something you need to understand is when we're trying to help people get into, well, a lot of times we're not helping people get into the rural lifestyle because we're selfish about it. I don't want a lot of neighbors. I don't. And one of the reasons I don't is because I end up with neighbors who come out here with a lot of money. They're not here to make a homestead or build or grow anything or be sustainable. What they're here to do is they want their little chunk of the West, and they want to have it the way they want it. They want to bring their ideology from the city to the country, and that doesn't work. So I want to also help people understand how to live in the West responsibly. I mean, how do you deal with water rights? How do you find a property that actually produces what you want? Because a lot of times people buy a property thinking that a realtor is going to share with you everything that you should know about it. They'll have to, legally they have to disclose things. So they'll give you a paper that says here's all the disclosures about this property. But if you don't even know what you're looking at, they're not going to point out, hey, this property floods 27 times a year. You can't you can't have a septic system here, that kind of thing. You don't know. You don't know. There's a lot of things you learn about an area, like where the water is, how deep the water is, what you can actually do with that property if there's covenants on it. I've seen people buy 20 acres that has covenants that they can't actually do anything with it for livestock or raising crops, and they think they're going to irrigate it. Now, irrigation is a precious resource. Everybody in the West has water rights that they use to irrigate with. So if you're irrigating, if you see an irrigation pump, meaning there's sprinklers or a pivot, or if somebody's flood irrigating, they pay every year to have the right to a certain amount of water, and that right is in a in in a hierarchy. So whoever's got the oldest right has the first right. So you can have, let's say you have, 100 inches of water. 100 inches of water would be 100 inches deep on on an acre, whatever. And you can spread it out over how many ever acres that you have allotted, right? And you can't spread it on land that you don't have irrigation rights to. So everybody owns these water rights. You can't just buy more water rights. They're already established. So there are no new ones. Okay, you have to actually purchase water rights from somebody else. So if you buy a property that has a creek running through it, that does not mean you can use that water for irrigation unless the property goes with the has the water right with it, because somebody downstream may own that entire water right. That means that if you pump water out of there, you're illegal and you can get in big trouble for that. That's a that's a water right that somebody else owns. That's like stealing something somebody else owns. So those types of things you need to understand when you buy a property. So that is, one of the major things is, what property do you buy? What are you trying to do? And then you try to find a property to do it. One of the things I see that a lot of people do that are coming from the city, they want to be right next to a town. So that is going to be the most expensive properties, that the ones that are nearest to town. They're also going to be the ones that don't have water rights on them typically, because if they do, they're astronomically expensive. Or the right has been taken away because of development. There's a lot of things you have to be careful of when you get next to a city. But they want to be next to a city because that's where the jobs are. That's where they can go shopping, right? They want the city life, but the country life as well. And who doesn't? I live where I'm at right now. I'm on 12 acres. So I'm not a massive farmer rancher. I didn't inherit anything from my parents yet. I mean, I might. Who knows if they still have anything left? They have, a few hundred acres and some cows and some horses, and I use that to kind of really showcase what I'm doing. Um, but they have desert land, so keep in mind the type of land that you buy is going to dictate what you can do as well. Most of my parents' land is covered with cactus, and you really, it's like one cow for every 40-acre kind of land. It's very difficult to run a lot of, well, I think we can do a lot with it, and we will try if we can hang on to the place. So those types of things you have to be aware of when you enter into this thing. We're 2 miles from town, but the town is 1,900 people. So it doesn't have a lot of resources in the town. So you have to understand, buying groceries is going to be extraordinarily expensive in this town. So we go, luckily we have, 40 some miles away, we can go buy groceries in bulk. Now, this is the downfall of all of our small communities, is that we have large chains that completely control and consolidate our food sources. But it's the reality of what we do in the West. We try to buy as much as we can locally and from small producers. But, we try to stock up too. We all have freezers. So you keep beef or elk and deer in your freezer and try to eat that all year round. And that's something a lot of people in the cities don't have as well. So they don't understand that, you need a freezer so you can keep enough food in it to last until you have to go to town again. Yeah, Costco and Walmart are putting mom and pop out of business. And when in the 70s, a lot of things, even back then, there was a lot of things that every farm and ranch had a few hogs and a few cows, and they milked some cows, and they had some beef cattle, and they had some goats and sheep and whatever, and they sold these things to places in town that actually produced goods or distributed them to the area, like milk, for instance. There was milk trucks that went around and would pick up milk from all these little tiny places around Conrad, Montana, bring it to town, and they would, package that and sell it right in the store right there. Well, now that doesn't happen. All those farms and ranches are like have eliminated, most of them have eliminated their little, um, you know, their ability to produce those products. So everything now is shipped away and is shipped in. It's all big dairies that ship to big companies that then ship the milk back through Walmart, and everybody drives from their rural area to a Walmart or Costco to buy the milk and stuff there. That's how it works anymore. So these small country stores, if you know of one of those small mom and pop stores that sells groceries, like down in Colorado Springs, there's one in Colorado Springs called Ranch Foods Direct. Mike Calicrate made that. That's an incredible company. And they source everything locally, and they grow their own beef, and they sell, pork and all kinds of extra stuff. And and they sell prepared foods that are local. It's incredible what they do there. So, all right. So Jeff H is helping us out here a little bit. If you want to read some of the chat, he's saying, bring coolers to make a trip to town. Yeah, Billings is a hub for probably where you're at, for the entire eastern side of the state. So if you go down here, we got Helena and Bozeman. We're kind of in between Helena and Bozeman. Those are the big towns around here. Bozeman is growing massively. Helena is growing in population. There's just really nowhere to live. So they're building housing like crazy. And then, if you go to Great Falls, Montana, Great Falls has got a lot of resources as well, even though it's kind of out in the prairie there, because the whole northern plains of that area of Montana comes to Great Falls to get all of its stuff now. So it's kind of the big town. Yes. so Travis, so I'm going to go down here and start talking about what you're talking about in the chat. So make sure you put something in the chat if you want me to talk about it. I can't get to everything, but I'm trying to get to some of this just so you guys understand the complexity of moving out here. Maybe some of the things you need to learn. If you have questions, make sure you answer them. And that's really what this community is about too, is like, what areas do you go to? Area is a huge one. I'm sorry, I'm going off on another rant here, but area is a huge one. You can make, it depends on what you want to do, but if you want to make more money per acre, right, then maybe Montana probably isn't the place for you, because we have winter 9 months out of the year. So it costs a lot of money to keep everything alive during the entire winter. You have to feed everything. There's no grass growing. It can get down to 30, 40 below zero with the wind blowing. I just did a trip where I drove from here to LA, and then I did a series of videos all the way up the coast of California. You can see this on my YouTube channel. I just posted the trip a week ago or something. And I kind of always wondered why everybody went, across the West and wanted to get to California. And until I went there, I'm like, yeah, it's gorgeous in California. The coast is amazing. And the coast is also very moderate climate. The ocean keeps that climate moderate. When I left the coast, it was 65 degrees. And when I got to Montana, back to my house, it was -5 degrees and snowing. So there's a massive difference there. And the the amount of winter dictates what you can grow on your property. So be aware of that too. You can make more per acre in a more rural area that doesn't have winter. But the further south you go, also when you get into eastern Montana, it's very rural out there. You don't have a lot of water, so you have to be very aware of water, and you don't have anywhere you sell your products because there's no people. So there's very few people in eastern Montana, so you also have to, if you're going to sell products direct to customer, if they're a perishable product like meat or something like that, or milk, you're going to have a customer base that's close. So if you go down to, Tennessee, Georgia, uh, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, a lot of those places will have areas that are rural that don't get much winter, that you can raise one cow for every 4 acres on, that are close enough to a city that you have a place to sell your products. So as far as financially goes, like viably financially, Montana's not really the place to go. It really isn't. The land is expensive. It doesn't produce much. Winter locks you out from actually producing anything during that time period. It's very difficult. So, hey, somebody's from Algeria here. So again, make sure you go. If you want to be part of the community, you want to get a month for free. I'm giving a month away for free to somebody on this live stream. So after the live stream, I will go in and choose somebody who's emailed me at trinity@lifeinthewest.com and just say, from the live stream, or I want to be part of the Life in the West community. And the community really is for people who are city dwellers or country dwellers that want to learn to help each other through this process. Right now, when you go to a restaurant, anywhere in the West, especially, 99% chance that you're eating the food that comes from Cisco. That's a company that provides food to all. It doesn't matter what restaurant you go to. Almost all of that comes from Cisco. Cisco, and people say, well, you can't make a profit at ranching. There has to be profit in selling food to the end customer. And I know this because when you look at Cisco, you look it up, they make 105% net profit. Let me back up. They make 105% return on equity. That's insane. So if you don't understand what that means, let's say you own your equity in whatever you own. So if you own a home, right, and it's $500,000 is your equity in your home. That year, you made $510,000 in net profit from that home. That's what Cisco does every single year. They made $1.9 billion in net profit. Net profit is not the same thing as gross profit. Gross profit is before your expenses or before all the other extra stuff. Net profit is after you've paid all your bills. That's what you made. $1.9 billion Cisco made last year in net profit. So that is 105% of their equity. I don't even know, there's almost no industry that you can do that in. So there's got to be money on that end. And I heard years and years ago, I heard somebody talking about, it's kind of before podcasting, but I can't remember where I was hearing it all the time, is that don't get into actually making the products. Get into being a middleman, because the middleman is where the money is. And we see that happening right now. We see Cisco, the packing plants, the big packers, which are based in Brazil, and a lot of it now with pork is controlled by China. Those are the ones that are making the money. And Cisco is a middleman too. They buy from the big corporations the food, and then they distribute it to restaurants. So it's very hard to compete with them to go sell to restaurants. So you got to sell to individual people. Now, we really need local food systems in place. We need to build grocery stores and places like that that only supply that buy from the local area to sell to customers in the local area. But we don't have that right now, because as soon as we have that, Cisco comes in and says, here, I'll just undercut you, and I won't even make a profit on it. So it's so important that we do these things, but it's not going to be like a super profitable thing. We have to do it because we love doing it, that we want to see rural grow. We want to see rural people, rural family values, and local food survive. Because without that, we're going to be in trouble. Big corporate extracts from local communities. That's what they do, because it's all about profit. So they only have to comply with whatever regulations are set in front of them. And they don't really see the end. They don't see what they're having an effect on down at the bottom. I People say that they're so global corporations, massive corporations, they say that they are more efficient. Okay? But we have to understand what efficiency is. Efficiency means that they lose or spend as little as possible. When the dollars come in at the bottom, they retain as much as possible all the way to the top. So if we're talking about efficiency and we're saying global companies are more efficient, yes, they are. Global companies are more efficient at extracting dollars from local communities and giving it to the people at the very, very top of that company. That's how people get, you know, that's how Amazon made it, and that's how Walmart makes it. So anyway, I got to say this. So when you move to the country, you're going to experience something that a lot of people talk about, and that is you're going to experience trying to get into a clique. Ranchers and farmers and landowners are cliquish. They do not want you there. Okay? You have to kind of win them over. I would say to farmers and ranchers that they need to be more they need to be more aware and helpful to the people moving in, because we need to help these people get started. We can't just go on the way we're going on, or we're all going to be out of business. Just so you guys know, and you probably have heard me say this before, we've lost 17,000 cattle farmers and ranchers every year since 1980. We cannot continue on losing that many farmers and ranchers every year and still have a viable food supply. And the way we're losing them is we're losing individual farmers and ranchers to larger and larger and larger companies. They have to be larger and larger. But I believe you can still do it on a small scale. And that's what I think a lot of people want to do. And some people don't even want to be supplying food to everybody. They just want the life out here. And part of that is the hard work and the dedication of taking care of livestock, growing a garden, canning meat, canning your own beans. They're about 40,000 times healthier than what you can buy in a store, because it's all chemicals from there. So, all right. So let's see if we can answer. I should get to some of these. So if you have questions or statements or something about that, anything I've said, please, so somebody says they live in Minneapolis, and him and his wife are already planning on moving out, and because of the stuff that goes on in the city. City dwelling, how many of you are city dwellers? Do you dwell in a city right now? I can't understand. I have a tough time understanding the life of a city dweller. When I was in New York City, I was invited to go to New York City to watch the premiere of Kevin Costner's a screening of Kevin Costner's second film for the Horizon series. So I went, and it was like, a fish out of water doesn't describe it, but there was people that were trying to show me around, or like, this is such a great place, and all I could see was, and then I had somebody threaten to stab me in the jugular on the subway and watch me bleed out, because I didn't even stand up for a lady. I just stepped over near her to be ready in case this guy attacked this lady. That's all I did. So cities to me have they they just blow me away that people live like this. Now, if you like that kind of life, I don't think everybody should move to the country. I don't. Most people are not going to like what they see in the country. And that's don't move out here to the country and then not like what you see because it's hard work and it's dirty and there's cows across the fence and and don't move out here and then get mad and try to change everything because you want your own personal little park. If you want that, then you better earn millions of dollars and you can buy one. I mean, that's the way the world works, right? I don't want you to do that, but that's the way it works. If you want to move out to the country, then become part of the country. Get involved with the local communities, give to the booster club at the school, go to local community events, buy a pie from the FAA fundraiser, FFA fundraiser, whatever it is. Okay. um, Somebody said California is the best. It is the place they ought to be. So, and we're gonna get this. I hear all the time, "Oh, you're not a real cowboy." Oh man, and where I go somewhere, they're like, well, this person, don't talk to them. They weren't born into this lifestyle. And I'm like, do you understand what you're saying? That means that if you weren't lucky enough, you didn't win the lottery to have your parents be a farmer or rancher, then you can't be one or you can't be a part of this lifestyle. That is so ridiculous. So you got to be a careful. All of us, every single one of us wants to be in Montana, have our own place, and then lock the gate so nobody else can come in here. That's what we want because we're afraid of the people who come in here. But people who understand that they want to raise something and be part of the community and learn how the unspoken rules of the West, like courtesy and property rights, and understanding that, great. We need people who actually grow food again instead of just big corporate farmers. So and you have to have some money to get started because you're going to have to buy a property and to understanding what that property needs to be, how far away you can be from civilization and your wife still, stay married to you and, that kind of thing is something you have to consider. It's not for everybody, even in the Old West, And I saw this in 1923. They portrayed this, but there was a lot of wives that came out here, especially because it was so hard in the West. I mean, back then it was really life was about surviving. You had to work really hard just to get what you needed to survive. And a lot of those women, they left their husbands and went back east again. They could not handle it. So it's something that you have to be aware of. It that is not made up. That is a true thing. This can feel isolated even though we're not. I feel overwhelmed by people, but to others, it can feel very isolating. So, honestly, it's just the way it is. Okay, let's read some of these here. Yeah, so somebody said, my wife and I have 100 acres and are told all the time that we aren't farmers and are faking. But we keep doing us and focus on community. You're gonna have to fight through some of that because the community will accept you if you're part of the community and you don't cut people's fences and you don't try to screw everybody in town and the last thing you want to do is come into a community with this attitude and you buy 100 acres and then you say, this is how we do it, and this is how we used to do it in Sacramento. We don't care how you did in Sacramento. Honestly, nobody does. so that would be the one thing not to say is this is how we did it wherever. This is how they do it over wherever. Just learn what the community does. These are small town atmospheres, so people will be in your business. They will know what's going on because they drive by and they're like, "Oh, so and so plowed such and such a field." I mean, you just know it. That's the kind of news that travels around town. Somebody's fence went down. Oh, somebody blew a riser, which is you got water shooting in the air in your irrigation system. Those types of things are going to be known. And when you're small time, when you're a small acreage owner, people are going to say that, but people say it to me all the time. So that I'm not a cowboy. What are you going to do? Quit? You say, oh yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm not. So I guess I can't do this. Thanks. You know, thanks for pointing that out to me. That doesn't make any sense. You just have to decide to keep going, not be a jerk, be courteous to people, be part of the community, and you will be accepted if you're doing those things. Especially if you're bringing produce in or doing something like that. It's really important to our society. So, so, so Stu says, you're from Central Idaho, or that's where you live now. So grew up in farming, live near a small town now, but trying to get further out once again. Once you get out in the country and a lot of people will understand the calmness, the slowness that comes over you. It's a different pace of lifestyle, even though that doesn't mean there's no stress. There's stress especially if you have to make a living off of land, or trying to make a living out here is pretty tough because there's not a lot of those jobs that you need to, there's not as many jobs. So, and the jobs don't pay as much because you're out here. It just isn't going to. So don't have that expectation that you're going to have this high paying job unless you can work remote, which some people do. I think the guy across the road from me, I think he works remotely. And most of the time, he has to fly somewhere all the time, but I guess that's his deal. Somebody said they watched my California video. That was very interesting. Good. I appreciate that. It was very eye-opening to go through California and see what's going on there. There's a lot of attacks against rural people. And so I guess getting into the rural lifestyle from the city is definitely, you do need to be aware that there is an atmosphere against rural living, not only because the big corporate doesn't really care about small time. They want to control the whole system. And by big corporate, I mean they just big corporations make profit. So when you sit around a boardroom and you say, here's a decision, sign off on this if you want to make an extra 3% in profit, they sign off on it. That's what they do. I mean, they're going to. And they're not really concerned about what that does to the little guy, which most of the time that just puts the little guy out of business. And it's happening all over. It's happening in Southern California, in the Cuyama Valley. A big corporate is just suing all the little people, all of them, everybody, including the school, for their water rights in that valley. They're doing that because they want to continue to pump as much water as they can from the ground, which is dropping the water table, and it's not sustainable. But to them, sitting in a boardroom somewhere, who knows where, they don't live there. Most of the board members probably never been there. So having people on the land that are thinking, I want to hand this down to my kids, is so important, because as you're sitting there thinking long term, like I want to be here for 40 years, you're going to take care of that land way differently than a corporation in New York or Chicago or Dallas or something, because that person or that company has no real connection to the land. They just want to make a profit. To make a profit is a short-term gain. Now, do we need to make a profit? Yes, we need to make a profit, or we can't stay on the land either. So learning how to do that with cattle, sheep, pigs, growing vegetables, that is a skill that you can learn. And as you come on here, we're talking about moving, or people that have a desire, at least, to move from city dwelling to rural life. I don't want rural life being overwhelmed. This is very hard for me to talk about because I don't want everybody moving to rural, because what we end up with a lot of times is people who move to the rural areas and then want to change it to the exact policies that the city has, or they view land ownership in such a way, and sometimes this is the case. They look at ranchers and go, or big landowners and say they just do whatever they want and they can do whatever they want. And some ranchers have that mentality, right? But so when you buy 10 acres, you're like, whatever's on this property or next to it belongs to me too. And that is a horrible, horrible attitude. And that's what will destroy your reputation in a community and will definitely isolate you from a community. I find it interesting though, some people move to these areas, they buy a small acreage, and then they totally destroy their reputation and any relationships in the entire area. And then you never see them. You never see them in town. You never see them at the small town. You never see them at the grocery store. You never see them at a community event. I'm like, why did you even move here? You obviously didn't want the community aspect of rural life. So what is it? What, you just isolating yourself from humanity and like, I'm going to stand on my hill? I'm not sure I understand that part. Our small communities need involved people and businesses and people who produce things in our areas. That's what we need, and not the people who completely isolate themselves and create, and act like. And so, as an instance, okay, if you buy a piece of property, I covered this at the beginning. I'm going to cover it again. Something that causes a ton of problems in Montana and rural areas is development on your property and water rights. So some people think they can come right in and start a junkyard. And I'm not being like sarcastic, like, oh, they're just junky. No, they feel like they should be able to start a junkyard wherever they want one, whenever they want one. Well, that has an effect on every single person's property around you. You can't do anything you want on your property. That is not the way private property works. You can't start a mine and use arsenic. You can't just take whatever water you want and use it. You can't just buy a piece of property and then irrigate it by pumping water out of the ground table, which is water under the ground, right? With 14 wells. That's not legal. Everything. So when you move to the country, there's a lot of stuff that you need to learn. Like when you buy a property, does this property have water rights? What are those water rights? Because you may have, you know, 10 acre feet, which is a massive, you wouldn't have 10 acre feet. 10 acre feet would be, 10 feet of water on each acre. You wouldn't have that, but even if it says that, you better find out when that water right is in the lineup, because as water comes down from the mountains, the people who have the older water right have the right to that water first. It doesn't mean that they're the person up the stream. It could be way down the stream has the better water right. To allow the person downstream to have their water first, or let them dictate when you get your water. So those are things you have to learn. That's how it works. Whether you like it or not, that's how it works. That's how the law works. Lots of people destroy their neighbors and get in legal battles and all kinds of stuff because they show up, there's a creek running through their property, and they just decide to dam the whole thing up. Like apparently they think that they can, they own the water as well, and they don't understand that. Okay, you guys got to ask me some questions here. Okay, any thoughts on chartered townships? We're 200 miles from the closest town and have full mineral timber and water rights. If we made a township with others, would that help protect the future? the future land. You know, I haven't even thought about that. That is an unusual case. Now, there are several towns in Montana that aren't really, they're not incorporated towns. They're just towns, like Sealy Lake. I don't know. It might be a chartered township. It's not. It's not even. I don't even know if it's a town. It is a town, but I'm not sure if it's actually set up as a town. It's very strange that those kind of things. I'm not even sure how that works. Honestly, you may have problems with like the EPA, but it depends on what you. So you'd have to get approval from the EPA to do whatever you did. The EPA monitors like a lot of, like, how many septic systems do we have? Is the septic system near a creek? Because you don't really want to pollute the creek with a bunch of, that. So those kind of things you have to kind of watch out for. Typically, that's what you need to watch out for. How many wells you dig, and the EPA with you have to get septic permits for everything. So that kind of limits you on how many buildings you can put on a specific area, unless you put in like a water system. But it's a question. Okay. In a recent video, you were around sheep ranchers while they were shearing, and you had some mutton. Why don't we see much mutton on our shelves? Could local beef option work for sheep? So this is very interesting. If you guys look into sheep or hogs, they're actually, I think you make more money growing and selling sheep meat or hog meat. I say that very specifically because you can't make money at sheep or hogs in the commercial market. There just isn't enough. They'll screw you, and you won't get paid for it. But if you're raising meat and selling it directly to customers, sheep or hogs is better because they produce more meat for what you put into them. They produce it faster. So like sheep, you have a lamb every year, right? Sometimes 2 lambs for every sheep. They're not hard to be around. You do have to really protect them because everything likes to eat sheep except for my little dog. He's terrified of them. But that is, in hogs, they can have like 20, you can have one sow and have 20 hogs in a year and sell the meat for $1 a pound and make way more than you could on cattle if you can sell that meat. So that is a very good thought process. Why don't we see more lamb in this country? So there's a theory floating around because I did a few videos on this. Videos that I make on sheep don't really do that well, so I'm not sure why that is. If there's like just total lack of interest in sheep, but in World War II, most of what we sent over to the guys in the trenches was canned mutton. So we have a whole generation of people that associated the taste, smell of mutton with war, blood, hardship, trauma, everything, right? So when they came back here, I'm guessing that the last thing that they wanted to do was eat mutton, right? Or sheep. I'm not sure if that's the whole reason that it completely went out. Australia supplies almost all of our sheep needs right now. Now, I do know 3 people right now that raise sheep and sell them to customers, and people love them. I'm not allowed to cook it in my house anymore because when I cook sheep meat, for some reason, our little dog is so terrified of it. I'm not sure why, but literally ran away. And he has never done anything like that. He loves deer or any other wild game that I have made or beef or anything like that. Pork. You can't even cook sheep around him, but I like sheep meat. I think you can really get creative with sheep meat because it's such a mild flavor as well. So you can really add a lot to it. I was down when I was at the shearing thing, they made some liver and rice and some lamb chops and some other stuff that was just fantastic. So lamb meat is actually pretty good. All right. Let's see. Yeah, and but with sheep, you do have to be very careful with predators. Everything loves to eat sheep. If you've just watching them shear sheep, how easy it is to go through their skin. The sheep are like, I don't know, they're weak and soft, and I mean they let you just flip them over and they just sit on their butt and let you shear them. I mean, and you know, if you get a little bit too deep with the nippers, you cut right through the skin. Anything punctures their skin. They're so easy to kill. So, you know, bears and wolves and coyotes and everything really love to eat sheep. So you got to bring them in every night, or have guard dogs, or have guard dogs. You know, so there's lots of added things there. And if you do get something in your sheep, you know, they can make a massive mess. Like up in Conrad, that you know, Lisa Schmidt, she said that one grizzly bear came in and killed like 40 sheep. That is devastating to you if you're making a living on sheep. And he just did that in one night, just killed 40 of them. Wolves over in um, Idaho, I mean, they killed over 100 sheep in one night. So you do have to be aware of that, that the predators will try to get sheep. You have to learn how to protect them. Okay. So Timothy here, he said we used to have sheep, but he got tired of them because you had to talk them into living every day. So sheep, sometimes they'll give up on life easier. Yeah, now, there are certain breeds of sheep that have a little bit more will to live kind of a thing. We always laugh because my uncle, he got into sheep one time, and he he didn't get into sheep with just like a start with a few. He got into sheep and decided he was just going to buy 270 of them all at once, start there. And so he had a disaster because, you know, lambing was way over his head as far as that many sheep, and they all need help. I mean, none of them can find their mother. They don't even know that that's their mother. You have to teach them that's their mother. They need a lot of help. Sheep need a lot of help. And he finally got to the point where he's just about ready to sell some lambs. And he pointed at one. He was out there with his dad, and he pointed at one of these sheep and said, "That's the best looking sheep I have." And the thing died right there. He's like, my grandpa said, "You can't put that much pressure on a sheep. You can't point it out like that." Now that's just a joke. It did happen, but it's just a joke. It's sheep. You have to baby them a lot more. Cows are way tougher, harder to deal with. You got to have way better fences for cows. There's way more infrastructure. You can't make money as fast with cows unless you're buying and selling a lot. So you know, there's all those things to consider. Wool is only worth something if you have very high quality wool anymore. So I'm wearing right now, I'm wearing a Duckworth undershirt. This stuff is like the best material in the world. If you guys, so wool is like a magical material to me now. Now that I've started wearing it again, especially as undergarments, it doesn't stink. You can sweat in this thing for days. Now, I'm sorry, that might be TMI for some of you, but I wore a wool shirt to kind of test this out because I was finding that when you wear wool shirts, they don't smell after you wear them. But if you wear synthetics, synthetics are anything with the name poly in it. So if you wear a shirt that has poly, that means you're wearing a plastic shirt, which is made out of oil. Okay? So for some reason, that makes bacteria or whatever causes the smell to really, really have be prolific. Whereas wool inhibits it. So you don't have the bacteria on you. I don't know. So I took this wool shirt that I wore as an undershirt. I even slept in it for like 3 nights because I was sleeping outdoors in a tent. You can see that in the video where I took the trip through California. And wearing the shirt, it smelled the same at the end. In fact, the only thing I could smell on it was the deodorant. There's a lady, Lisa, who I talked about in Conrad. She uses a sheep pelt with the wool on it, as her bath mat to step out on out of the shower. I'm like, well, man, doesn't it mildew? She said, no, it doesn't mildew because it's antibacterial. So, or whatever that is, it inhibits it anyway. So it doesn't grow anything. So, and it's so nice and comfy to step out in. And that's kind of that was my first aha moment. Like, what? And now I wear wool undergarments, man. You can sweat in these things like crazy. When you're working outside and you sweat in something and then you come back in and you smell like a billy goat, that's because I mean, as gross as that is, the bacteria is growing in your shirt, in the material that you're wearing. So pure cotton, I don't think it's not near as bad. I've tried this now. Almost pure cotton, it doesn't do it as bad. Wool is absolutely insane for this. So I think about the old cowboys back in the West when, they wore their wool long johns for like, 2 weeks at a time. I'm going, man, they must have been rank. But if it was wool, it might not have been that rank. I mean, obviously they're going to stink some if you did that for 2 weeks and not ever showered. But uh, it isn't the same. You guys will absolutely be incredibly amazed if you do this. Now, you can wear wool undergarments like this one, like Duckworth, because in the video that I just released, and it got 0 views, so I obviously did something wrong, but showing how they did this, they now are testing this wool so that they know the thickness, the microns, the comfort level. It doesn't itch anymore. They have bred the itch out of the wool, which is incredible. So it's got all the material, all the what benefits of wool, but it's comfortable and warm, and it's warm when it's wet even. So anyway, that's a rant. If you want to get Duckworth, make sure you use my code, which is cowboy at duckworthco.com. You can get 20% off, and that helps me out some too. Okay, back to whatever we're talking about here. Oh, thinking about getting their socks. Yeah, so I'm trying out a couple pairs of their socks right now, Duckworth socks, because I thought, well, my feet don't really stink anymore. As a teenager, yeah, I should have had those as a teenager. But anyway, the brand of wool shirts is Duckworth. And they have hoodies, they have jackets, they've got button-up shirts. Now, they're not cheap because Duckworth grows their wool in Montana and makes their entire product in the United States. So it goes to several different places because first you have to make yarn, then you got to make it into certain things, and they use synthetics in their products as well to hold it together a little better, keep it from shrinking, terribly, that kind of thing. But for some reason, it just doesn't smell, and it is so nice because it breathes, so it keeps you kind of cool when it's hot. It's a miracle. Using a natural substance like this, a natural material like wool, it just blows me away how good it is. So duckworthco.com. Use cowboy at checkout. All right. It's a great video. You just watched it. Oh, it must be the California trip or the sheep shearing one, somebody said. All right. I watched the Duckworth video. It was good. Yeah, saving up. It is expensive stuff. It is high quality stuff. High quality stuff. But, we have gone to where we use synthetic stuff, and that is cheap, but it's not good. So, all right. In Europe, where the lands are smaller, there are more smaller farmers, and agriculture is the first economic sector for France, and the agriculture industry is the first one with all the bad sides of. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying there, but Europe does have a lot of small farms and ranches, so they do understand more the like the homestead version, like the smaller property. But the West is unique in this case, the West of the United States, because even though it's beautiful in a lot of ways, it is desert. So you cannot do it's desert usually and rock at the same time. So it's very different than Georgia. Okay, Georgia, where the soil is really literally you can actually raise one cow for every acre in Alabama and some places in Tennessee. Out here, the average is more like 40 acres per cow. So it's not the same thing. You have to understand that. So that's why I'm saying if you want a smaller property and to start out in homesteading, you're probably better off going to places like that. I don't know anything about Mississippi. I hardly ever hear anything about those areas, but areas like Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas, those places have much more productive ground. And so when you're on a smaller acreage, you can make more or grow more, produce more per acre, which means that if you want larger acreage, you can actually produce more as well. And you don't have the winter to deal with. The winter is a killer. It's a killer of profit because winter means that you can't really produce. You're not growing anything during that time period. So you have to feed it, and that feed cost is what really destroys profit. Excuse me. All right. What breed would be best for meat? I assume you're talking about sheep. So this is it's not really like here's the best one for sheep or for meat in sheep. Um, you do have a lot of opinions rolling around. There's a hair sheep breed, and one of the people that'd be very good to go watch or talk to, and hopefully I can get him on here maybe, I'm sure I could, is Matthew from up in, what is it, something 406. Anyway, I did a video with him as well about regenerative grazing. He's taking his family ranch and basically restructuring the whole thing. Instead of just extracting off of it, he's trying to put livestock back on it to produce, to reinvigorate the soil, create new soil, better the land, and raise sheep up there. He's got hair sheep, which means they shed. You don't actually get wool off of them. Because I was going to say, like, companies like Duckworth have found a way to produce their own products with high quality wool. A lot of times the wool that isn't high quality, you about break even or lose money selling it. So it's not even worth having. So a lot of these guys go, if they're going to raise just for meat, they will actually raise a hair sheep. They have very good meat, but you don't have to deal with shearing every year and then trying to find an outlet for the wool. All right. Yeah, natural fibers are the way to go, especially when it's in contact with your with your skin. That's absolutely true. Hair sheep, somebody said hair sheep in his opinion are the best tasting. I have tasted both. Whatever Duckworth has and hair sheep, I don't know that I can tell a massive difference. I like them both. I think they're very similar in flavor. Lamb, sheep to me matters more the age that you butcher it. You do not, yeah, 406 regen. Yeah, thank you. That's who I was talking about. You definitely don't want to let a sheep get too old before you butcher it, because that is the biggest problem. Then the fat starts getting weird and coats your mouth and okay. Matthew was in Coffee Creek, that's the town, but it's it's not really a town. It's like 4 houses. When I was in town, I doubled the population. So that's where it is. It's kind of middle of Montana, central Montana. East of me. Okay. Do anybody have any questions about property or anything like that? I'm just going through some comments here, trying to find something Okay, somebody said they have American Black Belly and St. Croix. I'm assuming sheep, breeds of sheep. 3 years and so far no deaths. Knock on wood. So it does depend on the breed of sheep. There's the sheep. Sheep are especially like the black ones, which means the wool's no good at all. Black faced sheep, because they don't like the wool with that isn't all white. They want the white, the clean white wool, so they can dye it whatever color they want, right? Um, but they are a little hardier, in my opinion, than just the sheep, the Rambouillet or whatever. Does a proper town have a post office? What qualifies as a town? That is, that's a good question. As far as most people are concerned, if it has a post office, it's a town. A lot of times, you know, people have, or towns that are on the map are basically just towns that have a post office and 4 houses. But, so I'm not sure about that. Oh, somebody had Pete had lamb tacos yesterday. So that's good. I haven't tried lamb tacos. Make sure to send me an email. My community is at lifeinthewest.com. But if you want to get a free month in that community, I'll just choose one out of the people who email me at trinity@lifeinthewest.com. And you get a free month in the community. So you can kind of try it out. You can get free 7 days anyway. All right. So, and mutton is what I'm talking about. Mutton is different than lamb. So when they get a little older, they're called mutton. When they're younger, they're called lamb. Now, I'm not sure if we should use the term lamb because it's not really, we're not like killing the little tiny babies. We're killing them, a year old, and they're fully grown at that point. But we still call it lamb. Once they get older, to a certain age, I can't remember if it's a year and a half or 2 years or whatever, they start calling them mutton, and then they have that fat that kind of coats your mouth, and it's a little hard to deal with. All right, somebody just got off work. Apparently, they've been working all night. Somebody just checked online and said Cisco Foods is a huge company. Yes, it's a huge company. If you go to any restaurant in your town, most likely you're eating Cisco food. They supply a lot of food to schools. They're in all over. Okay. Somebody said they've eaten. Travis and Missy said they've eaten a lot of lamb overseas. I think there's a lot of countries, actually, way more countries that actually eat lamb. We aren't really much lamb eaters today, and I think it should come back. It's a good meat. It doesn't take. They take so little to grow. They do. They honestly take so little to grow. So they don't eat a lot. So feeding a sheep doesn't cost a bunch of money, and that's. So when we're trying to grow food for the country, that is one way we can do it, right? Cheap meat is, you can make cheap meat for hog and lamb or sheep and still make some money at it, even though you have to be the retailer to make money at it. And that's the difficult part, because most farmers and ranchers and small time people don't know how to do that. Even me, I have no idea how to make money at what I do. So, okay, let me get back into here. Oh, well, thank you for becoming a member. Somebody just became a member. I can use any support that you can give, because what I do is not a money-making proposition at this point. Just ordered some Duckworth teas. Yeah, absolutely. And they're incredible stuff. Make sure you use the sizing chart that they give you. Okay. We're making eating lamb great again. Yes. So in 1940, I believe, I might be a little off on the year, but around 1930 or 40 or something like that, there was over 6 million sheep in the state of Montana alone. Right now, currently, there is less than that in the entire country. So something massively changed with sheep. And that's why I asked people, and that's kind of why they came up with the World War II thing. But I'm not really sure if that's all of it or not, or whether we just, our palates changed. We were sold, something that beef is better. Don't get me wrong. As far as environmental impact go, we need to have cattle on a lot of our land, especially public land. Well, not especially, and public land, because public and private land need a large grazer. Cattle and buffalo are the two large grazers. They kind of go through and trample. They don't eat down all the grass in an area, but they do trample a lot of it into the dirt, right? They germinate seeds. They fertilize the ground with urine and manure. They create that new growth that elk and deer and all the other wildlife like. Without them, we're really missing a major key element to create a healthy ecosystem. I think you can damage land with cattle, but it's not as easy done, not as easily done. You kind of graze over and over the same way every time. Yeah, you're going to damage land, but they can be used as a massive positive for the environment, for creating new soil, for helping ecosystems, for wildlife, all that stuff. So we need cattle. Cattle are just not the easiest thing to make money at. They really aren't. Um, I think the best way is, which is what I'm going to do as well, is, you know, start with a few head. If you can make a profit with a few head, then you can move up, right? At least in my opinion. My dad never seems to make much money on his cows. We always come up with a whole bunch of ideas. We're always too busy to actually implement them. So you do need time to actually do that. And that's the sad part about right now is the cost of land, and then people not really knowing what they're doing. You're having a lot of people buy land for the purpose of just investment. And sometimes you're going to need that. Sometimes you're going to need to find somebody that's got money that can help you get into ranching if that's what you want to do. Or if you have money, invest in the right property. Put somebody in charge of actually managing. I would love to see a lot of these people who already own land just as an investment actually help by producing livestock. Hire a good manager that actually knows about regenerative grazing. And this one place up here north of me, they say they can prove a 500% increase in grass growth by using regenerative cattle grazing. That's insane. That makes a property look completely different. And if you don't think wildlife benefit from that, you're crazy. Oh, thank you so much for the Harold, for becoming a member, a ranch hand member on my channel here on YouTube. Somebody said they just had lamb for dinner last night. My family's name, last name, let's see, pesto sauce? Let's see, actually, lamb is also my family's last name, so it's special for us. Oh, well, that would be special, absolutely. Anybody else have any questions about anything? Land is pricey. Okay, somebody says. It takes dozens of acres to feed one cow in the West. So you can get by on less acreage in the West for cattle or sheep or hogs or whatever, especially sheep or hogs, because sheep or hogs don't require as much land. But every acre really, if you buy property on the top of a mountain in a desert area, that is not going to be the same. You can't produce the same up there as you can in a river bottom where there's deep topsoil. So you kind of have to be aware of that. You can't just buy 20 acres and assume that that cactus ridden rock patch that you bought is going to be able to run livestock on it at a certain rate. Because if you just throw them out there and they eat all the grass down, and then you keep them out there, and every time the grass starts to grow again, they just keep eating it off, eating it off, eating it off. The grass is going to die. So you end up not having anything. You have to really you have to move your animals around. Know what land you want. If you want to do that kind of land, you just have to have more acres of it, which is more expensive. But and don't expect to make a land payment off of what you're making right off the bat. That is not what you want to do. You want to learn the most you can about what type of property to look for, what you have to have in that property, how much water you need, if you need to be able to water the grass to keep it growing faster, how much winter you have. All that stuff makes a massive difference in what you can do with that property. Make sure you join lifeinthewest.com. I'm just going to plug in for that because I'm going to try to help people understand how that works. Okay, let's see, what else are we talking about? So, but a lot of people can move to the country, and that's where we get into a sticky situation. A lot of people that do move to Montana do it because they can sell their home that is now extraordinarily high priced somewhere, in a city, and they can take that money and come out here and outcompete somebody that lives here because they have the money to buy the property. I don't begrudge them that. Honestly, I don't. I think I would like them to have the understanding, and I would like it to be people who understand that the way of life out here, that they don't try to destroy everything that we have built in the name of conservation and have these ideas that actually are going to destroy all the independent ranchers and farmers and them at the same time. I don't want to see that. So I want to help people understand how to do this. And that's a very tricky concept. In fact, another thing that I'm doing, which I'm not really sure how I'm going to do this all, I'm going to have to set up ways to organize this stuff, but I've also I'm creating a game. It's called Cattle Kings. It's at cattlekings.io, and it's for raising cattle. I'm going to add sheep and all that other stuff at some point. But so right now you can, you're building your herd, and the object is to make it pay. So you're breeding your cattle. It's got all the genetics built in so that you can try to figure out what are the best strategies. How do cattle genetics work? How does selling commodity work? How does selling directly to somebody else through a sale yard work? That kind of thing. And understanding the economics of it at the same time that you're seeing what kind of calf am I going to get out of this. I think that's very important, that there's kids and adults that need something that teaches them in an educational, fun way. So hopefully that will be a benefit as well. Problem is I have to write the code, and I need to update a few things still to add some more functionality to it. But it does work. There's a lot of people playing it right now. Okay. So the Sebin Ranch north of Helena still raise sheep. They were a large producer of sheep in Montana. Yes, I believe they do. I believe there is some sheep ranchers around that area that still run sheep. Yes, Pete said they kept their day jobs to be able to do this. This is not something that typically you're going to be able to just move to the country and just bang, make an enormous living. I would like to see a lot of people be able to do that, but being self-sustaining, even partially, and the amount of dedication and work it takes. Dedication because you have to be there for those animals every single day, all the time, right? But the amount of work it takes to keep your fences up and keep them healthy, and it will give you an understanding of what ranchers do, what the people who feed this country do, and how hard it is on that scale, because you understand then what it's like on a small scale. And if you have the dedication to do it, it teaches you so much. There is a reward to it, even though there is a massive sacrifice. There's a massive sacrifice of time and money to do it. Hopefully you can make enough, when you have horses, that is not making anything. That's just pumping money into something. Hopefully you can make something out of livestock that actually pays for itself, at least, so you can understand it. Yeah, day job is self-employed, so that enabled you to do what you're doing now, I assume, move out to the country. A lot of times when you have a job, if it's not remote, you're not going to be able to move out to the country and do what you want to do. So, all right, I'm going to need a drink of coffee here. Sheridan, Wyoming is coming on. One of the things that what I'm talking about today, there's a lot of people who will be upset because I'm talking about it, because it'd be like, well, we don't want more people moving to the country. I've covered that several times today. Let's take in case in point Sheridan, Wyoming. So I did a few videos down there that got no views, so you probably didn't see them, with a veterinarian who lives in Sheridan, Wyoming, or just outside of Sheridan, Wyoming. He raises Wagyu bulls. And Sheridan, Wyoming used to be the typical town in the West. They had a flour mill. They had a butcher shop. They had a railroad right there. They had, I can't remember what else. And they used to be bigger. So when you look at towns like that, you go, okay, if COVID hit, and we had that system, well, I had a mine there too. So if you had that system, pretty much wouldn't have noticed it. There's very few things that you would have actually needed, because all the eggs came from local, the milk came from local, there was local dairies. None of that now. None. Everything from that area goes out to a corporation and then comes shipped back in to the grocery store and the other stores. So we have created a system that is now fragile. It's efficiently siphoning the money away from our communities, but it's also fragile, because if anything happens to any one of those distribution points, now they're so bottlenecked that it affects us dramatically more than it used to. That's why we need people on small acreages. We need new farmers and ranchers who have money to start. The people that have been in this for a long time don't have any money to even, most ranchers and farmers, just so you guys understand this, this is how they operate. They go to the bank. The bank gives them a line of credit for that year. And it depends on the size of the place, but it can be like $500,000. So you have a $500,000 loan. That means you're in the red, right? You start out in the red, $500,000 at the beginning of the year, and you spend all year working towards one crop of either calves or wheat or corn or whatever to pay off those loans, and hope that at the end you have enough money, $30,000 or $40,000 to feed to get by. Now everybody says, well, why do these guys have all this, the new pickups and everything? Some of that comes into play because of they get incentives by buying that pickup. They can write it off. Number two, it costs more money to have an older one. I will tell you that a lot of times when I was doing horse leasing company, we had an old pickup, and the thing broke down all the time because it was old. We weren't able to get places on time, which cost us money. We weren't reliable, which cost us money, and we had to put tons of money into fixing up our pickup every year. When I looked at the numbers, it was actually less expensive to make a payment on a brand new pickup than it was to drive the old one. So when you see these people with these new pickups, a lot of times that's not because they're rolling in the money. It's because they get a tax break and it costs more to drive an old one in many cases. If they can't be broke down, obviously ranchers and farmers work on their vehicles all the time, but if you're broke down, something isn't getting done. So that means if your vehicle is broke down, you can't get out there to feed the calves or the cows, or you can't get to the top of that mountain to fix that fence before all your cows go into the neighbor's place or whatever it is, that is costing you money, time, resources, and mental health. Seriously, because mental health, if you're worried all the time because you're worried that you might break down 14 miles from home, that doesn't help your mental health. The stress level and everything goes way up. So a lot of times you see these outfits driving new pickups for that reason. Reliability, it costs more. Somebody just said hi. So if I bought land, no animals, who could pay me for grazing rights? So if you bought land and no animals, could the question I'm hearing from that, just make sure that you let me know if I'm wrong, is can I lease the ground out for grazing? The answer is absolutely yes. In fact, there's ranchers all over all the time that are now looking for grazing property to graze on, and they pay pretty good money. Here's the issue. When you're leasing a property out to somebody, you have to know a little bit. You got to keep an eye on them because when they're leasing it, if it's not their land and they're not sure they're going to be there next year or whatever, they will overgraze everything. Just because they're trying to get the most, they've already paid you, so they're trying to get the most out of their property. So you got to be careful who you lease to. I think it's better to have a lease that's several years long, because when you sign a contract with a guy for 5 years, he's not going to overgraze it, because if he overgrazes it, he doesn't have any grass next year, so it doesn't do him any good. So you and make him invest in it, right? But it is not hard to find somebody that will pay you to graze. It's just you just have to be a little bit picky about who you allow to graze it, if that makes sense. All right, from Massachusetts, somebody's on here. Well, I appreciate your kind words. I do whatever I can. So Pete says his brother deals with new equipment all the time and is always in the shop and warranty issues. That is true. Not all equipment is created equal, and some equipment will cost you way more time than other equipment. So knowing what equipment is good, what equipment is bad, there's really a happy medium. We never really had new equipment. We had a new pickup. And my dad has, a couple of pickups. They're not new anymore, but and we've kind of he's upgraded his tractor a couple times. We started out with, when we got back into the ag world, we went up to Conrad and bought these two Alice Chalmers tractors. I don't know what they're 1970, somewhere in there. And holy crap. I mean, they both had cabs on them, which was fantastic. There was no heat or air conditioning or anything like that. So when it was hot, you were just like hot. But you just had a fan. One of them had a fan that would blow on you. And anyway, there's a happy medium. When we upgraded to, when I was like in my late 20s, we were able to buy a swather that was a decent swather. It wasn't new, but it wasn't like old, shot like the one we had, which was always broke down right when you needed it. Because the only time you needed it was when, the 5 days between when the rain hit, and that's when it would break down in the field. So then we had a good swather for a long time. If you have a good piece of equipment, sometimes it's better to hang on to it if it's one of those ones that works really well. So somebody said new pickup is BS. Go on marketplace and spend $60,000 a year on a 1-year-old truck. So that is an argument that I personally agree with. Buying a brand new one is a lot different than buying one that's 1 or 2 years old that has 10,000 miles on it. When they've kind of run off a lot of the depreciation. If you can still depreciate it out in your taxes, you probably are better off buying one that's just a little bit, is kind of run off that first initial loss of value. So same thing with equipment. Like I said, some people do always want to just buy new, and then you end up with warranty issues as well. So Yeah, older repairs may be way cheaper and be with than the new stuff. It's all a game, guys. You got to have something that's reliable because when you're farming or taking care of animals, the last thing you want is like right when you need your piece of equipment, it doesn't work. So I think you, 2 years ago, when that super cold storm hit here and it was like 40 below zero for several days, if you didn't have the right equipment and you couldn't feed your livestock when it's that cold, that is the last time you want to be working on something, unless you got a super warm, heated shop, that you can work on it in. Uh, and not only that, but it has to be done immediately because those animals, if they don't eat, they freeze to death. You have an impending thing. When you need something, you need it to work, and you need it to work right now. So there's that happy. That's why I said there's happy medium between getting something so new and something that's not going to work for you when you need it. Yeah, the prices of new pickups is astronomical. They're insane. It's insane. Now I drive Dodges. I drive Dodge Rams, and the reason I do is because of the Cummins engine. I just love the Cummins engine. They last forever. My pickup, the pickup I drive, is a 2010. It's 2010. It's got 265,000 miles on it, and I just keep repairing the stuff. And there's not a lot that happens to it. I had to change a throwout bearing, had to change a whole bunch of seals which was expensive to do. On the transfer case one time, I had to change the turbo, replace the turbo once. So there are things you have to do, but I think it's still cheaper than buying a new one. And it's so reliable. It is extremely reliable. So why would I get rid of a reliable vehicle? And when it gets to being unreliable, then maybe if I have enough money, I would move that. Do y'all do cow calf show horse? No, I've never heard of it. So up here in Montana, we really don't have much for reining or there's a couple guys that do cutting, but there's not a lot of places to do cutting competitions around here. That's mostly south of us. So there are some people that do it, very few. We're mostly just working cow ranch stuff. There are horse shows, but Montana in the entire state, which is 600 miles uh, long, only has 1 million people in it. So we just don't have the massive, like those types of things that you can do. For a while, there was a lot of team painting going on, things like that. Are these tariffs affecting y'all? No, no, they're not affecting anything that we do. So you understand tariffs. Tariffs would only be if I was trying to buy something from China to sell to you. Then that would be tariffed. When I sell something to somebody else, that doesn't affect me in the least bit. So, and these countries putting tariffs on everything, we're not shipping anything out of the country anyway. So, I mean, we're getting totally screwed on the beef that's coming in. Is coming in extremely cheaply and we don't even have hardly any regulations on that we have to label it to say that it came in the United States. In fact, right now, the way it's set up, you can ship in beef from Brazil, unpackage it, repackage it here, and put a U.S. sticker on it. So when you go to the grocery store and you buy something from Costco, you really don't know where that thing came from. It could be from Australia, Brazil. Who knows? We do need labeling laws on that because everything else has to have a label on it to see exactly where it came from, all that stuff. I don't understand why we don't. All right. All right. Now, Oh, so somebody says Texas is 90% show horse, 3% ropers, 2% calf ropers, and 5% breakaway ropers and barrel racers. Wow. Lots of show horse stuff in Texas, huh? I know Texas is huge too, but they have a lot more people. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to go on and see who has emailed me and give away a free membership to our site. So to the Life in the West community. Apparently, I don't know if so I'm going to go with just randomly, I'm just going to shoot this one right here, and that would be, let me see, race dude 29 at gmail.com. So I will send him an email out that you'll get an email from school. That's where the community is. It'll probably say Life in the West on it. And congratulations, you get a free month of the community at, you can see the community at lifeinthewest.com and then go to the community from there. And that community is really about, helping people understand how to sell local, how to grow locally, how to live in the country. So, all right. Well, I'm going to go. I'm going to jump off on here. Thank you guys all for getting on here. It's been awesome. Yes, I'm very close to 300,000 subscribers. It really doesn't do you any good anymore. It doesn't really matter how many subscribers you have, but I'm almost there. I'm almost to something. It's something. All right. Well, thank you guys for being on here. Have a great day. I appreciate you, and we will be talking in the future. Make sure you leave any questions or whatever. Go to lifeinthewest.com. Join the email list, join the community, and we'll grow this thing from here. All right. God bless everybody. How do I close this?